Friend, on 28 April 2021, the spacecraft of NASA, Parker Solar Probe, became the first spacecraft in the world to touch the sun. This was a shocking news. How can a spacecraft go near the sun? Why didn't this spacecraft melt? What did it see in the sun? Now I will explain you all this. Friends, Parker Solar Probe was made because so that we can know about the sun and understand the sun. Its mass was 735 kilograms. Its size was as big as a small car. That means this spacecraft was not that big and heavy, but it is one of the most powerful spacecrafts in history. It is also the fastest spacecraft in the world. Its speed is 60,000 kilometers per hour. It was named after Dr. Eugene Parker, who did a lot of research on the sun. Friends, this spacecraft touched the sun, but the question is, why didn't it melt? The first thing is that this spacecraft didn't land on the sun. The sun is not a solid thing, like the moon. The sun is a ball filled with gases and plasma, which is gathered due to gravity. Now the question is, why didn't this spacecraft melt even when it went near the sun? Friends, this spacecraft reached one layer of the sun in corona. This is the first layer of the sun. This layer of the sun is very hot. Its temperature is 20 to 30 Fahrenheit. But we have to understand here that there is a difference in heat and temperature. The temperature of this layer of the sun is very high, but the hot particles in it are quite spread. That's why very few hot particles touched this spacecraft. That is, despite having a lot of temperature, this spacecraft did not feel as much heat because the hot particles in this layer of the sun were spread, and very few hot particles touched this spacecraft. Apart from this, a very advanced heat shield was also installed in this spacecraft, which is called TPS, that is Thermal Protection System. Anyway, this spacecraft reached the layer of the sun in corona. This video you are watching is actually the video inside the sun, the first layer of the sun of corona. We humans who have always tried to understand the sun, we never thought that we would be able to see this amazing creation of Allah so closely. Friends, here is a very interesting thing. Solar wind coming out of the sun, which is coming out of the sun with speed, just like the wind is blowing. This wind is going at a speed of 2.7 million kilometers per hour. That means you think of the scene that the sun must have. This solar wind is very important for our life. This wind coming out of the sun keeps us safe from the cosmic rays coming from the galaxy. Friends, now you hear the sound of this solar wind which was recorded by this spacecraft. But one thing is important here. Scientists actually analyzed the data collected by this spacecraft, frequencies, amplitude, etc., and converted this data into sound. Now you hear the sound of this solar wind coming out of the sun. We knew about this solar wind, but we didn't know where this solar wind comes from. This spacecraft also found out about this solar wind, that it is actually coming out of the same layer of the sun. This solar wind was first discovered by Dr. Eugene Parker. The name of this spacecraft, Parker Solar Probe, is actually named after this. Parker Solar Probe was a mission that I think in the history of mankind, we will be able to know more about this beautiful creation, that is, the sun, in the coming time.